Say hello to our NBA panel, DraftKings contributor Nick Friar and Rotowire's Nick Whalen. They're here for NBA price checks and need the best plays in each price range for the NBA's 9-game slate this evening. So let's start with the top of the price range. Who is your favorite guard play over $7,000, Nick Friar?
So last night, I didn't want to go with any of the too high price guys just because, there were a couple of like 8K players that I thought we could, bunch in together with some cheaper options, but I'm going to go all the way towards the top. We got a few guys over 10K tonight, a few high 9K guys as well. I'm going to go with James Harden going up against the Pistons. That's the one team that's coming off a back-to-back tonight. And the Pistons are one of the worst teams defensively against point guards this season. They're among the top 10 points per game allowed this season against point guards. And Harden just faced them a couple games ago, went off for 18 points, 10 rebounds, 12 assists. Of course, always a triple-double threat, very reliable double-double option. And we look at his assist totals too. He's never had fewer than 7 this season. So I'm going to go with Harden as my top guy tonight.
All right, Nick Whalen, who's your favorite guard play over 7K?
Yeah, I don't mind paying up for Harden. I don't really mind even paying a really steep price for Steph Curry going up against that horrific Pelicans team tonight. But I think you have enough options under the 5-figure range that you can kind of pick and choose. And you don't necessarily have to blow a ton of your budget there. Dejante Murray at 9,100 to me is pretty appealing. He gets a good matchup against an Orlando team that has been like suspiciously fun to watch so far. Still not a very good team, not a very good defense. I think this is a backcourt in Suggs and Cole Anthony that he could really exploit defensively. He has at least one steal in every game. Obviously, one of the best guard rebounders in the league. The assists have been there pretty much every night. He's scoring over 18 points per game. Hasn't quite taken like the massive leap in scoring that maybe we'd hoped he has, but without DeMar DeRozan in San Antonio, he has certainly emerged as the guy there. The one concern, of course, Orlando near the bottom of the league in pace, but San Antonio uncharacteristically in the top 3 right now in pace, so it should be a pace up game for the Magic. I think there's a pretty strong case to be rostering Dejante tonight.
All right, Nick Whalen, how about your best forward play over 7K?
I'm going to go Harrison Barnes. 7,600. I did not think that this is where we would be a couple weeks into the season where Harrison Barnes is making a run at the MVP. But neither of these teams, he's going up against Charlotte tonight. Neither of these teams are good on the defensive end. Both these teams play very fast, should be a fantasy friendly game from top to bottom. But the Kings have just very, very few options on the wing. And that's part of what's led to this great start for Harrison Barnes is like if De'Aaron Fox doesn't have it, and it's kind of been every other game for him so far, there's not a lot of other options on this team. You're bringing Buddy Hield off the bench. Marvin Bagley's out of the rotation completely. Mo Harkless, not exactly an offensive threat. So they've turned to a guy in Harrison Barnes who's essentially been a role player for a lot of his career. And he's kind of taken on like a borderline star role so far. So he hasn't dipped below 33 DraftKings points in any game this season. He has 4 games of at least 40 DraftKings points. He even has 50 DraftKings points upside. I think this is a great matchup for him to exploit tonight.
All right, Nick F., where are you going? Forward play over 7K.
So I want to cheat a little bit here. I'm going to go a little bit under 7K because, we're going to go a little really cheap a little bit later on. Karis LeVert at 6.8K going up against the Blazers tonight. Of course, you can slide him over a shooting guard as well. And we've seen his production increase game to game since his return. And I know, Malcolm Brogdon coming back last game, you might think, oh, well, how's he going to do? Of course, Sabonis has been struggling a little bit. And last game was LeVert's best fantasy performance we've seen this season. And he also brings it on the defensive end too. So, and this is a guy too, similar to James Harden, where he's kind of blowout proof because he's going to go and provide assists. LeVert may not go and score as much on a given night, but then you're going to see his assist numbers rise. It's kind of like a sliding scale. And sure, he can go off, but either way, he's going to produce. He's just going to, sometimes you might do it in a different way, which is also why I like his over on his points assist total tonight on DraftKings Sportsbook, which is at 24.5 right now.
All right, Nick F., sticking with you. Who is your favorite center over 7K?
Again, I just want to go a little bit under 7K, and this guy's at 6.6. There's Evan Mobley, right? So who looks great at 7.2K going up against the Raptors. But I want to go with Jarrett Allen because he's got the hot hand right now. He's coming off back-to-back 55 DK fantasy point performances. Look, on a given night, I'm going to go with Evan Mobley over Jarrett Allen probably 7 times out of 10. This is one of those 3 times where I got to go with Jarrett Allen right now. We know he can grab boards. We know he can fill it up on the offensive end too. And when you look at Portland and Charlotte, then I know we talked about Charlotte before, how like they, but either way, I think with Portland and Charlotte, they've performed similarly against centers in terms of points per game and rebounds per game as the Raptors have this season. So I'm going to stick with Jarrett Allen to stay hot tonight.
All right, Nick W., which center over 7K are you going with tonight?
Well, first of all, I love the Jared Allen call. I think a lot of it is the matchup against Toronto that just doesn't really have a true center, hasn't really settled on a guy that they like. They're still starting Achua, but his minutes have been all over the place. He's obviously undersized, especially compared to a guy like Jared Allen. Kem Birch has kind of been in there every now and then, Chris Boucher. So I think this is actually a really good spot to roll with either of those guys in the Cleveland front court. But I kind of like Sabonis at 9,300 tonight against Portland. Like Nick F said, he's been down these last couple of games. I think this is a good bounce back spot for Sabonis. I like Jonas Valanciunas at 8,700 against Golden State. He's been a double-double machine so far this season. He's playing like 8 more minutes per game than he did last season. So that's been huge. But Karl Anthony Towns, I think as well at 10,700 makes a lot of sense. He just put up 46 DraftKings points on the Clippers 2 nights ago. The Clippers are a terrible rebounding team. They're bottom 5 in the league in rebounding percentage. They're the, I believe, second worst defensive rebounding team in the league. The only problem is the only worst rebounding team than the Clippers is the Timberwolves. So kind of 2 competing forces in that one. But even at that elevated price tag, I think Towns has a really, really high floor in these contests.
All right, Nick W. Now we need some value. So what's your best guard play under 5K?
I really like the initials thing. I feel like this is like very elementary school, but it's working well so far. I'll throw 2 names out there. Joe Harris at 4,400. He finally broke out on Wednesday against Atlanta. I believe he had 6 threes in that game, had been pretty quiet through the first 2 weeks of the season. And then a guy that I think will be a fairly popular pivot in this low cost range tonight is Malik Beasley, also priced at 4,400. No D'Angelo Russell for the Timberwolves. I think we pretty much automatically see more Malik Beasley in this game. He's really only had like 2 decent games this year, kind of adjusting to coming off the bench, but he's a little overqualified for that role. And I think not having Russell tonight maybe unlocks more of the Malik Beasley that we saw when he was healthy last season.
All right, Nick F., who are you going with?
I'm going to go with Devin Vassell tonight at 3.9K. I know we're talking a little bit about the Spurs Magic game earlier with Dejante Murray. I know with Vassell last time out, he got quite a minutes bump with Jakob Poeltl out, and then we saw him actually play, 30 minutes last game, 27 before that, and we've seen him produce as a result. He's coming off back-to-back strong performances like Allen, of course, not as well as Allen, but when you look at Dallas too, who Vassell saw last time out, they performed similarly to Orlando versus shooting guards and small forwards tonight. So at 3.9K, I'm going to take a flyer on Vassell as my cheapest guy tonight at guard.
All right, Nick F., let's finish up with your best forward or center under 5K. So some more savings here.
So I'm going to bring it all the way back to the Nets-Pistons game. I'm going to stay on the Nets side of it again with the Pistons coming off a back-to-back. I'm going to go with Lamarcus Aldridge at 4.7K. What we saw the other night with what the Pistons did up against Joel Embiid. Of course, he had a rough night. But when I see, as much as I saw that, the Pistons are among one of the worst teams in points per game against bigs. We're talking power forwards and centers. And seeing them go and expend all that energy on the night before up against one of the best center in the league, that makes me think, okay, they're going to have a little bit of a tougher time going up against Aldridge tonight. And they're going to have their focus elsewhere too, because you got a couple other guys who are quite a bit better than Lamarcus Aldridge, much greater offensive threats. So he's going to be my value play at the big tonight.
All right, Nick W., who are you rolling with?
I actually like quite a few guys in this range tonight. It'll be tough to make these decisions, when I officially lock in the lineups. But on the other side of that Brooklyn-Detroit game, I kind of like Isaiah Stewart at 4,700. It's been a bit of a rough start for him. Hasn't quite lived up to his ADP if you're talking season-long leagues. But I feel like this price is just too low at 4,700. I think he still has a lot of upside in this game against a Nets team that, like we mentioned with the Raptors, hasn't really settled on a center and doesn't really have any great options there. So I like Stewart. I like Bobby Portis at 4,700. Still no Brook Lopez for Milwaukee tonight. Nick Batum at 4,600 for the Clippers going up against Minnesota. He has 34 DraftKings points in each of his last 2 games. And then, like Nick F. mentioned, Devin Vassell, 3,900 seems like a really good deal. He's eligible at guard and forward. Played a season-high 31 minutes on Wednesday against Dallas. Not exactly a guy who you'd think would be like a natural replacement with Jakob Poeltl out, but the way that the rotation shuffles, Thaddeus Young starts playing more minutes at center. Devin Vassell kind of slides into more minutes at the forward spot. 31 DraftKings points in that game. I thought he was vastly more effective than Doug McDermott, who returned from injury. So I do think Vassell at 3,900, pretty high floor for a player at that price point.